Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Current Issues. I'm your host, Hesham Tillawi. Looks like we're trying to work on the sound earlier, so we kind of not fully 100% prepared, but I think we can swing it. And, well, ladies and gentlemen, we could not be here last week because Lafayette, Louisiana had one of the biggest international festivals where many bands and many groups come down to Lafayette, Louisiana from all over the world for something we call Festival International. And it was pretty good. A lot of people came down. And normally the downtown area where the studio is located in or at, very much it was off limits because there was too many people in there, and also the studio was being used. Actually, our equipment was used for the festival, but we needed the break anyhow, and I'm sure you also needed the break. But lots have happened since then, ladies and gentlemen. One thing that happened today was the release of Sami Al-Hajj, who was a CNN cameraman that was arrested by United States military in Afghanistan. He was proven not guilty 6 years later. And, you know, we do have a picture of Sami. It's amazing, ladies and gentlemen, when 6 years of your life are just wasted because somebody decided that that's one of the sound things that we wanted to work with, but looks like we got it right. But anyhow, ladies and gentlemen, this gentleman, Sami Al-Hajj, he was released. Actually, his plane touched down in Sudan. That's where he's from. After 6 years. He has a son who was a couple of months old when he was arrested in Afghanistan and charged with terrorism. He was tortured in Guantanamo Bay, and he very much so. I'm glad to hear that he was released. Now we still have many hundreds of innocent people in Gitmo, as we call it, that needs to be released to join their families. Many victims of the war, and Sami Al-Hajj and his family were victims of what George Bush had done. Another thing, ladies and gentlemen, General Petraeus looks like he's going to be the commander of the Central Command, CENTCOM. Of course, General Petraeus is our guy in Iraq. He's the top military guy in Iraq. After Admiral Fallon had resigned, well, actually he would not resign, but he was very much kicked out because he refused to go along with George Bush and his war in the Middle East and his war mainly against Iran. Admiral Fallon said that it will not happen on his watch, and sure enough, because he said that, and we reported this to you a long time ago when he said it, but I think he said it about 6 months ago, but last month, as most of you know, he very much left. He was forced to leave, and something else happened, that the commander of the 5th Fleet was also replaced by someone who is very much in line with the same ideology as Petraeus and George Bush. So very much what George Bush is doing, actually he's making it a little bit harder on our military for the next president, whoever it might be. If it's McCain, then those people will be in the right place at the right time to very much destroy what's left of Iraq and move on probably to Iran and other places in the world that we don't even have the money to even travel there, much less spend billions of dollars on a war that we did not have anything to do in the first place with. And some other, I think we do have a picture of General Petraeus there. Don't know if we put it there so everybody will know who the next military guy who's going to make the decisions to continue with this nonsense war that George Bush had taken the country into. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, also Barack Obama, it looks like he's gaining a little bit over Hillary Clinton, especially with today's announcement from a former chairman of the DNC, the Democratic National Committee, where he said that if we need to continue with the same old policies, then we need to vote for Hillary, but if we want the new direction for the Democratic Party, then we need to go with Obama. Now, Obama, as most of you know, that the media had built him up very much, and they tried a couple of weeks ago to tear him down, especially with his pastor. You know, it makes you wonder, why would one man and what he said 7 or 8 years ago matter that much, and then you have him go? The media had very much given his pastor Jeremiah Wright, they had given him an open mic, so to speak, with almost all the main important news network like CNN and PBS and the Press Club, etc., etc., to say what he said. And of course, Obama finally had distanced himself from his old pastor. Even though, ladies and gentlemen, what his pastor said, I would say I agree with about 90% of what he said. Maybe 10% I could probably reject and not agree with him, but 90% of what he said is probably true. And, you know, ladies and gentlemen, we are, today, 2008, and as most of you know, the economy, for the first time in the United States, rice is being rationed. This did not happen since World War II. That's the last time America had rationed food. I know we had rationed gas in the 70s, but that was for a political reason. But this time we are in trouble. The whole world is in big trouble. The whole world had paid attention to what George Bush was doing, and it took 8 years not just to bankrupt the country. I really believe that George Bush was picked because he had experience and excellent experience, extended experience on bankrupting entities, just like he had bankrupted very much every company that he had that he ran. And they picked him because they knew that this is the guy who will bankrupt the United States. And sure enough, I guarantee you, ladies and gentlemen, the days ahead, especially financially, you will be feeling it. Some of you are feeling it already. The statistics out there that in the last year, which is only 4 months old, actually not the last year, but this year, there had been about 10 to 12% increase in the usage of credit cards to purchase groceries. So very much people are, credit card is not really your money. It's very much a card that you borrow money on in hope that you will be able to pay it back. And if you have to use it for groceries and think that your $15 or $25 monthly payments will do it, well, definitely we are in trouble, and the number of people who will continue borrowing money to feed their children will grow. We are very much having it pretty good in this country, because many places in the world, ladies and gentlemen, people are having a hell of a time feeding their children, because food cost had skyrocketed in many places. As a matter of fact, in Egypt, the president yesterday had announced a 30% increase in government employees' raises just to help them. But when you have cost of living, especially on food, goes up 200% and 300%, and 100% for sure on all food product, then that 30% will not will hardly do anything. And of course, the dollar has a lot to blame to what's going on in the world. Gas will also just wait. If you are thinking about taking your vacation this summer, definitely you will be in trouble big time. It's going to cost you a lot of money. But anyhow, ladies and gentlemen, this whole thing of what we are going through now, which very much took your attention away from domestic issues such as healthcare. What the heck happened? Now when you talk to people about healthcare, it's like health what? Or when you talk to them about Social Security, or when you talk to them about unemployment, when you talk to them about anything, people don't know. People's attention are very much only one issue that they are concentrating on, which is the war, which it seems that if we do get McCain in power, with Petraeus where he is and other people that they are placing, we already borrowing money to conduct the war that we are in, but I guarantee you they will end up destroying this country. And I'm really beginning to believe that this whole thing was not to destroy Iraq, but to destroy the United States, because they are headed that way, unless you, which of course is probably way too late for you to do anything about it. But one thing, ladies and gentlemen, I'm really astonished when I see our candidates catering more to what Israel thinks and visiting Israel and to what you think on the American street, because definitely what Israel wants, Israel gets, as most of you know. And the thing is, it makes you wonder, why would, and we have some pictures, I want you to put some pictures of our candidates like John McCain and Hillary, and also George Bush by the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem. Well, I think we have, he's a scary looking guy, I understand that, but I guess what's his name, here is Johnny. It's scary. But go ahead and put his picture by the Wailing Wall, and you have one for Hillary. I want to try to make a point here, ladies and gentlemen, with these pictures. And okay, let me see if I can help them over in the control room to put the right picture up, which is McCain by the wall. Okay, here we go. Now, I just want to make a point. I don't have any problem with the Jewish religion. I think, as a Muslim, we are to respect the Jewish religion and the Christian religion as a religion of God. And now, of course, some might say, well, the Jewish religion today is a little different, but that's not my problem. It's if it's not the same religion what it was, but I respect all religions. But if you see this picture right here with McCain, and he's being pushed by I think what's his name, the senator from Massachusetts, Friedman, well, I drew blank sometimes. And then there is Hillary Clinton by the wall. Now, this is a religious exercise, ladies and gentlemen. Just like you see Muslims going into Mecca and actually, performing the pilgrimage. It's a religious exercise, and it is with Judaism. It's a religious exercise to go to the Wailing Wall. Now, I'm wondering what Hillary Clinton in this picture is actually saying. She's probably saying, "Forgive me, Father. I have to do this if I want to see the White House again." And of course, John McCain is probably saying, "Oh, what the heck? What people do for politics." And but this is, imagine if you've seen one of these presidents. Yeah, that's what he will be looking at. Imagine if you've seen these candidates going to Mecca and performing a pilgrimage just to pacify Muslims. What do you think you on American street you would think? But when you see them by the Wailing Wall, you don't even think about it, period. That's how far, that's how much the media is affecting your mind to very much accept and be willing to accept anything they throw at you. We want you to love Israel,
then you love Israel. When you see your president, and we are having this picture right here when President Bush visited Jerusalem, you see, when you see these pictures, it doesn't faze you at all. And you don't think that, okay, Jewish religion, it's different than Christianity. As a matter of fact, they very much totally different religions. And if you want to go back to history, those two religions were in war with each other from the beginning, from day zero, those two religions. But the point I'm trying to make here, ladies and gentlemen, is when you see George Bush and all these candidates by the Wailing Wall, you don't think too much about it because the media had very much pacified. If this would have happened about 50 years ago, I guarantee you will be outraged because your president is performing and practicing a totally different religion. Just imagine if George Bush is standing by the Kaaba, which is the Muslim religion, which is the Muslim shrine. I think your feelings and your emotions will be totally different than what it is when you look at George Bush with that. I'll tell you what, I know we do have our guest on, but let me, before I introduce my guest, let's go to the phones with Liberty. Liberty, go ahead.
Shalom.
Hi.
It's Senator Joseph Lieberman.
Yeah, Lieberman. I just couldn't, I mean, it's not that I don't know him very well. It's just at that moment, thank you for calling in. Yes, Joseph Lieberman, very much pushing him. Good boy, just pray to God.
Well, simultaneously, DNC didn't support him in his re-election campaign and went with Iraqi war veteran, opposing the war. Consequently, he went to independent, but we now see where he's at.
Right.
A question. Well, I got a couple of comments. I'm registered independent, and to add to that, I want to remind voters that Ron Paul's still on the ballot, as well as libertarians and constitutionalists. I'd prefer these candidates have the Constitution with our Bill of Rights, along with our Declaration of Independence, as opposed to being in Israel at the Wailing Wall, because that does not represent all of Americans. And Israel's not our 51st state, although they have 3/4 of both houses, the Senate and House of Reps, and obviously our executive branch, correct?
Well, of course.
And just briefly, I want to encourage your viewers, and it's not just with the housing market, but since the feds have dropped the interest rates, 7 times in the last 5 months,
right,
they can call their credit card companies and demand they lower their fixed interest rates. I've done it successfully. I'm physically conservative. It's reserved strictly for medical or mechanical. But I had one particular one drop 10 whole points on me.
Well, I hope people will listen to that, and if your credit card company refuses to drop it, I guess you can pay that balance with another credit card and go to a lower credit card.
Exactly. They're begging for business.
Very good. Thank you. You said you have a question.
Yeah, I do. There's times I've missed your original broadcast, and I'm finding it ironic that the pixels in the replays, that it's frozen, and your rebroadcast is not rebroadcast, it's frozen pixels. Do you have any idea what's going on?
Are you talking about when you watch it on TV, on cable, or on the internet?
On TV.
Wow.
It's happened more than 4 times.
Okay. I have no idea, but definitely I'm sure our people here at the studio are listening, and we will make sure to ask them about that.
All right.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Peace to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. Well, ladies and gentlemen,
something interesting actually happened, and all it's because of the media. See, the media is just like a computer. Our bodies, our brains, just like a computer. A computer programmer will sit down and write a program that this machine will very much understand, perform, and execute. So when you tell the computer to do something, if that computer does not have that information programmed in it, it's not going to do it. So, having said that, our brains work very much. We probably duplicated the way we think, except we managed to have someone that is much, much faster than us, which is a machine. But our brains are very much like that. What they program us with, we definitely become. And that's exactly what the media has programmed you since September 11. Even though the jury's still out on exactly what took place in September 11, we really don't know much about what took place in September 11 except the pictures, and I underlined, the pictures showed us that 2 planes hit the buildings and those buildings fell. But as of now, we do not have an independent investigation to really tell us exactly how it was done and who was behind it. All we know is 19 Muslims who were in Afghanistani caves very much planned this extremely complicated operation, which they made it seem very simple. Just 19 Muslims with box cutters were able to do this. That's the picture, that's the programming that we have been programmed with, and very much many Muslims even accepted that. But, well, the result of that, ladies and gentlemen, because of this programming, and like I said, whatever you are programmed with, you become. And many people became very much programmed to think and act against Muslim and against Islam, seeing Islam in a very derogatory manner, seeing it as a religion of violence, seeing it as a religion of war, even though the reality of the matter is totally, totally different. But Muslims in the United States especially have been coming under attack from several sources. The media is one of them. Unfortunately, the laws that we have in the country helped that, and the laws that we created in the country after September 11, such as the Patriot Act, very much will allow the government to go and do whatever the government wants to do under this idea that we are fighting terrorism, even though until now we really have no clue what we are fighting or who we are fighting. We are creating our enemies as we go. Well, to combat that, ladies and gentlemen, my guest tonight is Anisa Abdel Fatah, who is the chairman and founder of the National Association of Muslim American Women, and also heads the International Association for Muslim Women and Children, a United Nations accredited NGO with the United Nations Habitat Conference and the Division on the Inalienable Rights of the Palestinians. She is Dr. Anisa. She is the past president of the United Association for Studies and Research, a Northern Virginia Research Institute and think tank. Dr. Anisa was also a member of the founding board of directors for CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations. She served for a brief period as the executive director of the Center for Public Policy and Research. Dr. Anisa, can you hear me?
Yes. Hello, Hesham.
Okay, great.
Hello?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I hear you fine.
Very good, very good. Welcome to the program. This is your second time on the program, and I appreciate you taking the time to join us tonight. Very much your organization came up with 7 points that would seem to solve the problem, and you in the United States, especially for Muslims and for everybody, which is very much, it's not just for Muslims, but and you titled it Towards a More Perfect Union. Before we get into these 7 points and what they are. We're going to go into the very much the most important of these points. But since the last time you've been here, which been probably about a year ago, have you seen any increase in the way the media covers Muslims, the way Americans are acting and responding to whatever the media is giving them and bringing to their homes?
Well, I think that things have improved generally in some respects, and then in other respects they have stayed pretty much the same. I don't think that things have gotten worse for Muslims here in the United States, and I think most of that is because not only Muslims, but also lots of people in the United States are waking up and becoming aware and seeing that, this is one country, and that when we allow one group of people to be stigmatized and for them to be deprived their constitutional rights, that it's a threat to everyone. So I think that once people came to realize that we have people speaking out now, not only from the Muslim community, but also the non-Muslim community, and also from some of the faith communities, even the Jewish community, speaking out about this general kind of attack on the Constitution. People take a different angle, an angle that they feel comfortable with to address the issue. Some people will look at it as an attack upon, a religious minority. Some people look at it as an attack on the Constitution. But however they look at it, in general, I think people are starting to wake up and to understand that kind of what happened in this country after 9/11 became a threat to everyone's constitutional rights.
Now, you said people are beginning to wake up. What people are you talking about? The American public?
People in the country general, yes.
You must be seeing something I'm not seeing, because what I'm seeing...
I talk to people, and I don't necessarily mean that they're waking up to the point where they are ready to take any type of particular action. But I think that increasingly people are, and even you see this, on television in some respect, the tone, the attitude has come down, because I think even the pundits on TV have realized that the people are not as gullible, they're not as afraid, they're not as easily manipulated and fooled as they were, say, immediately following 9/11 and shortly thereafter. We don't have, like we had after 9/11, all of these ministers from the coming to condemn Islam, to call the Prophet Muhammad a pedophile. I don't know if you remember the intensity of the attack against Islam in this country following 9/11. But anybody who remembers that would have to admit that things are a lot better now than they were then. And also, I think, like I said earlier, that people who are not Muslim or Arab are also starting to recognize that they used Muslim and Arabs kind of as a scapegoat and fear, what we call Islamophobia, as kind of a guise under which they started to attack the rights of all American citizens. So I think that people have waken up, and I think that things are, I'm not saying that things are completely improved, and that was the whole reason that we wrote the policy paper and started this initiative that we call Towards More Perfect Union, a plan for healing and reconciliation in the United States post-9/11, was because we felt that there needed to be a more overt attempt to address the injustices that took place after 9/11, and more to initiate some kind of healing and reconciliation between the Muslim and Arab community and the general community, and also our government and law enforcement. In other words, kind of a statement that we have reached a point now post 9/11 where we need to look at what we did, see the mistakes that we made. We need to correct those mistakes and make the unity of our country a priority.
Okay. Now, one of those points, the first one, as a matter of fact, in those 7 points for a more perfect union, is you're asking for a full congressional investigation into the role that United States national and local media played in the unjust backlash against Muslims and Arabs following 9/11.
Right.
A congressional investigation? Tell me about why a congressional investigation into the media would help solve that particular problem.
Well, okay, let me put it this way. I don't think that it necessarily solves the problem. But I think that what an investigation would do, it would help us to see exactly what was going on after 9/11 and who orchestrated the campaign. And I think looking back that most people, not only Muslim and Arab people, that when we look back kind of at how that thing played out, it was almost seemed very deliberate. It didn't seem that people were randomly just out of anger, coming to these TV shows and cable TV shows and radio shows.
Anisa, who orchestrated that campaign against Muslims?
Well,
because most Americans didn't even know what Muslims were before 9/11.
Right. Well, we don't know, and that's why we're asking for the investigation. We want to know why the FCC, the Federal Communication Commission, didn't step in. Now, you remember when Janet Jackson had a wardrobe malfunction that everyone said created some obscenity on TV. The FCC jumped in immediately, created some kind of fine or punishment for what they felt was some kind of deliberate act, of revealing or obscenity. This media campaign against Muslims was allowed to go on, for months, if not
now, let me just...
And the FCC never stepped in to stop what was very obviously hate speech that was being used to instigate and inflame anger and hatred against Muslims and Arabs in the United States.
Now, as a chairman of the National Association for Muslim American Women, and you telling me that you don't know who orchestrated this or who, if you go to a hearing in front of Congress to discuss this, which I don't think they will, but let's say you do, are you not going to offer them any directions of where to start looking?
I can say that we have suspicion, and this is part of our whole strategy. What we're suggesting is that before we start laying blame, because we're not interested in doing what they did, we're not interested in also investigating and inflaming against whoever it was that orchestrated the media backlash against
who are they
in the United States. Hesham, we're asking for an investigation because we don't know. We have suspicion.
Okay.
We have suspicion. We want a congressional hearing because we want to know. We want to know what happened. We want to know who the players were. We want to know what their motivation was. And not only do we want to know, we want the American public to know. And that's why we're asking for a congressional hearing.
All right,
after we do our fact-finding, then we'll talk about accountability. But I'm not prepared to say I already know, because if I already know, why do we need hearings?
All right. I'll let you off the hook on that one.
Okay.
Okay. The second one is... requesting congressional hearings on Israeli human rights violations in Palestine and Lebanon. Now, don't you think that right away, when you include a point like that about Israel, then you lose the game?
Well, no, because actually the point for number 2 is not so much emphasizing Israel. It's emphasizing the point that there are approximately, people say, from 5 to 8 million Muslims in the United States, and we are also taxpayers. When it comes to the issue of the Middle East, and particularly the Palestine-Israel conflict and the ongoing conflict between Israel and Lebanon, our voices simply are not heard. We are absolutely ignored. There's a saying that taxation without representation is tyranny. Muslim and Arab Americans on this particular issue get absolutely no representation. Part of our position is that part of this whole phenomenon of Islamophobia, this marginalization and isolation of the Muslim community, Muslim and Arab community in the United States, includes this unwillingness of our elected officials to hear our voices and to represent our positions, particularly on the Palestine-Israel conflict. So when you read the policy paper, it doesn't present that as simply we want this because we feel like this is something that we like. We're saying that we're entitled to it as our right to have our political perspectives represented. And this political marginalization and silencing of the Muslim and Arab community in the United States has to stop because it is wrong and it is unconstitutional. We are taxpayers. We have the right to representation, and we have a right particularly to representation on those issues that we decide are important to us. I think that for many Muslims, and I'm not saying that if we were asked to make a list of 1 to 10, that these conflicts would be number 1 on our list of priorities, but they would be there somewhere. And it is so brazen that we are absolutely ignored on these issues that we thought this was a good place to start. to emphasize this whole idea that there is a great injustice taking place in this country because a whole community of 8 million, approximately 8 million people have been politically silenced, and our Congress has completely turned their back to us, and that we are not receiving our constitutional right to political representation, particularly on the issue of the Palestine-Israel conflict. So the request for hearings is more so a request for representation, because we believe that our sentiment on the particular conflict is consistent with what the law says, that we're not saying anything that's contrary to the Geneva Conventions, that's contrary to any of these other treaties and things that talk about how people are to conduct themselves in conflicts during military occupations. But our voices can't be heard, and when we do speak out, we're always making it sound like we are the radical fringe. We're not the radical fringe. The law says what we say, that this is an illegal occupation, that the people, the Palestinians, are being denied their rights, that Lebanon is a sovereign country, that Israel does not have the right to bomb Muslim countries at will simply because they have the unconditional support of the United States. We are standing on the side of the law, but unfortunately, because of the way that the media treats the issue, people are made to believe that the Muslim and Arab voice is a radicalized or a militant voice when it comes to the Palestine-Israel conflict, and that's not true. And this is another side effect of this whole Islamophobia phenomenon, is that whenever we speak out, people automatically characterize what we have to say as something that is counter to the popular culture, something that is radical or militant. And this is a type, leads to a type of stereotyping that is very negative and has an adverse effect on a lot of people in this country, and it's unfair, and the stereotypes are wrong. And if the truth was told and people were allowed to know what international law says, that we do have a law that governs these types of conflicts, that the United States has turned away from the law, then people would come to understand that the Muslim and Arab voice is not the radical militant voice, that actually we are the reasonable voice that is calling for the law to be applied equally and fairly to the conflict. So the request for hearings is more a request for representation.
Okay. Now, what about the point, now I'm going to jump just for sake of time into the most important that I felt. What about the Constitution and the First Amendment? You want stricter laws to protect that. What's going on there?
Well, actually, what the policy paper is saying is that we would like to understand what the relationship between the Judeo-Christian evangelical movement and our government and media is. It seems that there is some type of relationship. We don't know exactly what that relationship is, and we're hoping that through some type of a special commission put together to examine that within the context of the First Amendment of the Constitution, the Establishment Clause, that prohibits our government from establishing a state religion. It also prohibits our government for showing preference for any one religion over another, for attempting to establish a state religion, like when these people say, well, the United States is, the religion of the United States is Christian. We want to understand what is all of this and who's behind all of this. And we also want to know how this relationship is impacting the lives of Muslims and Arabs in this country, and if it doesn't have something to do with the deprivation and violation of our civil rights and liberties that we have seen as a result of this Islamophobia that resulted after 9/11. It just seemed to us, and I think to a lot of other people, that the evangelical movement played a very prominent role in this demonization and vilification, of Islam. And it seemed that it was so orchestrated, so well planned, so in concert, almost with everyone within that movement speaking kind of like a single voice, a single language that wasn't created just after 9/11, because these attacks and vilifications started almost immediately after 9/11. So really what that is asking for is it's saying we want, Congress to uphold the Constitution and the Establishment Clause, and that we want to understand what is the relationship between evangelicals and our government and our media, and what impact that relationship is having on, the lives of particularly Muslims and Arabs in the United States, and if it's playing some role in this whole Islamophobia phenomenon.
Okay. Now, the rest of the points, I'm just going to go over them, so we'll talk about different details. You're also asking that the Department of Justice to initiate an investigation into possible constitutional and civil rights violations against Muslims. You're also asking and requesting a special commission be created to review the Patriot Act and Muslims and Arab complaints regarding abuses. Now, these 7 points, if it wasn't for 9/11, you probably would not be asking Congress to act on these. There was one thing.
Well,
go ahead.
Well, I wouldn't put it that way, because I don't want to draw any direct link between 9/11 and these particular things. What I want to draw a direct link between is the reaction of the media to 9/11 and these particular events. 9/11 could have taken place, and our media could have treated that incident in such a way that it kept our country from fragmenting, kept us from being polarized and turned against one another. But they made another choice. They made the choice to polarize the country, to fragment us, to attempt to turn us one against another based on race, based on religion. What we want to know is why the media reacted that way. We want to know why the FCC didn't step in to stop all of the hate speech, the instigation, and the polarization of our country that was taking place, and why it was allowed to happen without any regard for public safety. Now, there are people who would say, well, every ethnic minority, every religious minority takes a beating when in the process of assimilation in the United States, and that might be true. But that, we would talk about pre-9/11, was already going on. After 9/11, something else started to happen, and this was this specific focus on the religion of Islam as a source of terror or inspiration for terrorism, and all Muslims and Arabs as either terrorists or potential terrorists. And this was used to create a kind of fear of Muslims and Arabs and Islam that is very dangerous. And we know it's dangerous because we had murders, we had mosque burnings, we had women being physically assaulted, we had children being put out of schools, we had people being told they couldn't wear their scarves. There was a whole reaction.
Okay. Now let me ask you,
for itself.
Dr. Anisa, let me ask you this. Don't you think that all these points would be covered by a very simple demand, which all Americans should be demanding, just a wholesale investigation of 9/11? And all these points, that I know you don't want to link 9/11 and to what's happening to Muslims, but unfortunately you really can't. You don't have that privilege, because what is happening to Muslims and after 9/11 is a direct, there's a direct relationship with 9/11.
Well,
why aren't people asking for just a simple?
Well, we had one. You remember we had one, and they issued a whole report.
Well, I mean, we did not have
tearing that report apart because.
Yeah.
Okay, you have.
We did not. We had. Anisa, we had 5 Republicans, 5 Democrats who sat around the table and said, don't blame me, I will not blame you. And they came up with something completely different. It took them 2 years to start that commission. And one of the major events on September 11 was Building 7, a 50-story building that they did not even mention in that. And there are a lot of things that did not make it. So this was not an independent.
So you're making my point. I'm glad you said that, because now you're making my point.
Okay.
Because that whole issue is a completely different type of issue with buildings and what type of this and what planes do, a whole different type of scientific investigation that is way outside of our, it has nothing to do, what we're looking at is the social, the religious, the legal, and the constitutional issues at play for a specific minority in the United States. This is a completely different issue and realm of interest. And I'm not saying that in order to diminish the importance of understanding exactly what happened on September 11, 2001. I think it's very important that everyone knows and feel confident that we have a good understanding of what happened in our country that day. But my interest right now in respect to the Muslim and Arab community is a little bit different. What I'm interested in are the social, political effects of what the media did following 9/11.
Okay.
I don't want the media to be let off the hook for the role that they played in what has happened to Muslim and Arabs in this country since that time.
Okay, very good.
If we confuse that with buildings falling down and how this happened and how that happened, believe me, we'll get pushed to the side because it just doesn't rate in comparison to that.
Well,
in this realm of social, political, and constitutional discussion, then we can make our arguments separate from that, and we don't have to keep taking on the stigma and the stain of that, which is something that the media very much wanted to do.
Yeah.
We don't want to help them in that.
Well, definitely the media has a lot to answer to, not just what happened to Muslims after 9/11, but also to the way they covered and the way they informed us about the war on Iraq before, during, and I guess we can't say after because we're still there. Because they have a lot, and an investigation should be. Yeah, because they had
people allowed them to link 9/11 to Iraq when there was no link.
Right.
So we don't want to do the same thing when it comes to what happened to the Muslim and Arab.
And the thing is, the thing is, they knew it. They knew exactly what existed there in Iraq. Reports were coming out, analysis were out there. So the media had, but they had to cover it that way. Tell you what, stay with me. We're going to go to the phones. We have people waiting to ask you questions. Let's go with Joey on line 1. Joey, you're up. Turn your TV down, please.
Yes, I have a question that is not related to what you're talking about, but I think it's an important question. Somebody told me today that Michael Moore was arrested for going to Cuba when he made his Sicko film. Is that true? Do you know?
I don't know. Anisa, do you know anything about that? I mean, I remember when he went to Cuba, but I don't remember him getting arrested.
Well, no, he went about a year ago, and I was just wondering, the administration has been after his ass for a long time, and you know that. And I was just wondering if you had heard anything, because I just heard today that they arrested him for that. I was wondering if that was true.
He was not arrested. I remember that. Now, he was questioned because Cuba, you do need special permission to go to Cuba, and that he did not have.
Okay.
But he was not arrested. He was debriefed. Let's put it that way.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But he was with Larry King last night, so he's doing pretty good.
Okay. So he's not arrested. Yeah.
Oh no.
Okay.
Okay.
One more question.
Sure.
Okay. It's a quick one. Have you ever heard of Jiddu Krishnamurti?
What is it in English?
That's his name. He's from India. His name was Jiddu Krishnamurti. He was, when he was a child, they decided that this society called, the Theosophical Society had decided that he was supposed to be like the next Jesus Christ or something. And when he turned in his about 30 years old, he turned his back on them, and he was totally against religions, Muslims, Buddhists, Catholics, Christians.
Yeah, no, I have not heard of him. No.
He said the thing to do was not to believe in, listen to anybody, any groups or other things like that, like us Christians and Muslims or whatever. That is to look into yourself and find God in you.
Okay. Thank you, Joe.
That's where he does find God, and I've read several books on his writings, and it sure makes a whole lot of sense to me.
Very good. Thank you, Joey. Okay, Joe, we're gonna have to move on. Do you have a particular question?
Okay, yeah, I do. I said, why has the Bush family been so tight with the Saudi family for way before even George W. was born? And I've seen George W. walking with the Saudi prince hand in hand.
Yeah.
And what is that all about?
Okay. Thanks.
Right.
Thanks for your question. Okay. Let me answer that question very quick, and I'll have Anisa comment on that if she wants. The Bush administration, or actually the Bush family, have been in the oil business for a long time, and they have benefited immensely from their relationship with the Saudis. So seeing Bush hand in hand with the Saudi king or the Saudi prince is really not a big deal, because this is another thing of how the media makes you look at things. When you see him hand in hand with Putin, for instance, you don't think anything about it. Or when you saw him massaging the shoulders of Merkel of Germany, you thought that was probably stupid but funny. But when you see him with the Saudi king, then whoa, there's a problem. Anisa, any comments on that?
No.
Okay, that was easy. Okay. Now, tell me, was it today that you had the press conference, or when is the press conference to announce these 7?
The press conference is May the 6th.
Okay.
From 1 to 3 o'clock p.m. in front of the Capitol building. We'll be in that area called the West Front grassy area. We have invited Representative John Conyers to join us. We invited Representative Dennis Kucinich to join us. And, of course, the Muslim Congressman Keith Ellison, we invited him also to join us. And the purpose of the press conference is to introduce our policy paper towards a more perfect union, and also to call upon Congress to implement the 7 points that we call the NAMAL political wish list for 2008, NAMAL being the acronym for National Association of Muslim American Women. And the 7 points is our political wish list that for the political season 2008, we're hoping that we can get our elected representatives to adopt and implement these 7 points, and to start to initiate this process of healing and reconciliation in the United States.
Anisa, you mentioned this process of healing.
Yes.
I mean, do you think there was something broken to heal it? I mean, did the Muslims have anything to do with this, that they would have to start this healing?
Yeah, no, I think that there was a lot of hurt. I think that the Muslim community was traumatized.
But unless you solve the problem, of the media, you really can't start the healing process.
Well, I'm thinking, my position is that the healing process starts once we start to understand exactly what it was that happened, why it happened, when those people who initiated these things or carried out these things, if anyone did in fact do that, then that they are held accountable for it in some way. And then we have restitution. And in our program, restitution is restoration. In other words, we're not asking for our government to do anything special in order to compensate Muslims or Arabs for what we went through, like they gave reparations to the Japanese for being interred and what they went through after World War II. We're not asking for anything except that our Constitution be restored, and that all of the negative stereotyping and splintering of our community, that all of us make an effort to heal it. And I think our country is desperately in need of healing.
Very good. One day when I meet you in person, you will whisper in my ear who they are. But
well, if we have these hearings, at the end of the hearings, then we're all going to know who they are, and we won't have to have suspicion and all of these kinds of things, that we'll know clearly. And I tell you something I think also that is interesting, if we can get these hearings and things, then not only are we going to find out what role our media played, what role our religious institutions played, who dropped the ball, how we allowed hate and anger and the desire for revenge to kind of overcome the whole country, how we stigmatized and hurt and marginalized a whole section of our society, and the type of pain and trauma we imposed upon them. We're going to come out on the underside of this thing if we can get it done.
Very good.
A much stronger country, I think.
Very good. Anisa, all I have time is to say thank you for coming on the program. Again, it has been a pleasure having you on the program. Thanks. Good night.
Thank you very much, Hesham. Good night.
Sure. Thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, of course...
enter your destination number.
Okay, well, we need to enter a destination there. My destination. All right, well, ladies and gentlemen, I wish if we had time, but if we can very quickly show the picture of the children who were blown up by the Israeli tank while they were sitting on their breakfast table. That is the picture 28 and 29. If we can show 28 very quickly, those children, if we can show it very quickly. Okay, those children, ladies and gentlemen, now let's go and show 29. 4 children of the same family and their mother, ladies and gentlemen. Let's put 29 very quickly. They died. These people, only one survived. Their mother also died a couple of days ago while they were sitting on their breakfast table eating breakfast, ladies and gentlemen. That's Israel. That's what they're doing. That's what they don't tell you. It's the same media. Of course, Anisa does not want to say who they are, but you know who they are. And you know who you are. Because on this program, ladies and gentlemen, we say it just like it is, and we say who they are. Protect your family. We will see you next Thursday, next week. Good night.
Opinions expressed in the previous program are solely those of the segment's producer and do not